Hey y'all, I'm James Wright. Welcome to my shop, and today we're going to be doing a little bit with the Japanese saw. Let's make a saw, or at least the handle. So I got to stop here for a second. I was at a tool show not too long ago where a guy was selling the blades. And these aren't any blade. These are old stock from the 70s. He believes 60s and 70s they were made. And they are a much thicker stock. They're actually designed to be a heavier cut. These aren't your finishing saws like most people think about when they think about the Ryoba. That's really thin. These are actually a very thick plate. It's actually a little bit thicker than most of my back saws, about the same thickness I would have with a large panel saw. But the cool thing is they're old stock and they're not hardened like one of these. They're not intended to be replaceable like traditional Japanese saws. They're actually intended to be sharpened. So these are handmade to a much higher quality and want to be wanting to play with. Now I'm going to be making a very basic handle on this. In the future I might take it off and do something a little bit different. But for right now I just want to play around and see what I like, because all I've known are the few that I have purchased commercially. I want to see, what do I like? Now, traditionally, Japanese saws weren't something you would actually purchase completely made. You would purchase the blade and then make your own handle in your own style. And we've come to know these long handles as the standard Japanese handles, and they were very, very common. But many Japanese woodworkers would actually make all sorts of other handles and grips for them. And sometimes they'd cut this tang off and put it at 90 degrees to the saw, and there's a bunch of other styles having them bent and curved in one direction or another. But the most common one is this straight handle you're going to see here. And so I have two pieces of wood I want to sandwich into this, and one of them we're going to recess the tang down into and then fill it. Now, I was originally planning on doing something far more standard and traditional for the Japanese style, and I decided to actually make it my own. So if you want to make something traditional, do not follow this. There are lots of other guides online. For me, this is me wanting to experiment, and I want to do something somewhat Japanese in that I'm going to make my own handle in the way that I want to play with it. And this is meaning that I'm going to do something a little bit different. And so I'm starting with white oak, because I mean it's not a good wood unless it's white oak. Well, after laying out the actual marks on the wood where the tang needs to go, we're going to come in with a chisel and define that line heavily. And I'm not going to hit it hard because I don't want to split this. Then we can come into the router plane and take it down a step or so. And then I can come in with the chisel and define the line a little bit more. And we can do that a couple times until we get down to thickness. The nice thing is with the Stanley router plane, there's actually a bit of slop in the adjuster, and that slop is exactly the thickness of one shaving. And so it allows us to finally set the blade down and down and down by about 1/100 of an inch until we get very close to the thickness of the tang. And I can determine that with calipers, of course. What else am I going to use? Actually, I have these wide feet on the end of my calipers. They're a separate piece you can purchase that allows you to reference a larger area, and I use those quite a bit for depth setting. I used to have a separate depth adjuster, and I probably still have it somewhere around the shop, but I found that I use the calipers considerably more now. And then we just take it step by step until we get down to exactly where it needs to be. And I want to do a little bit of detail in here. There was a couple nicks from the blade that weren't quite where I wanted to be, and so we can come in and file those out. Nice thing is this doesn't have to be terribly pretty, and it doesn't have to be terribly smooth either, because I need a spot for the glue to fit. Yes, I'm going to glue this in place as opposed to just putting it together and then drilling it through and putting a pin in. I know the most traditional method would be to put a pin into the end of it to hold it in place, and you'd actually have a couple of them along the handle, and then you would cover those up with a wrap around it. But I don't want to do that. I want to glue it in place because I've kind of gotten to the point where I really enjoy epoxy for a lot of things. I don't use it as much for finishes or filling gaps, but for adhesives, it is a fantastic glue that works incredibly well, and I've been using it more and more as I've been experimenting with it and testing it. The problem is right down at the end of this, getting into that tight point is a pretty tricky little thing. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect because the epoxy will fill the gap. Having a little bit of rough isn't a bad thing, and it will be completely inside. But I want to make it as pretty as I can, so I'm going to clean out all the little bits, coming in with a sharp knife, and you can get it really good and clean, and it makes you happy. Is it better? No. Does it make my soul feel good? Yes. Once we've gotten this mortise cleaned out and good and exactly where we want it, we can put things in and test and make sure that I can actually clamp it down. I actually want the tang to be ever so slightly proud, because the piece I'm putting on top will have a little bit of crush to it. And when I want to crush it in there, I'm going to put a little bit of tension in it, but it'll hold it a little bit better. And then we're going to be using some simple epoxy. Mix it up, put it on there. And I really like using this tip with using the tape straight onto the bench. Spiral around and then peel the tape off and put it away. And when the tape hardens from the epoxy on it, you know the inside is hard as well. So we can wipe this off, fill in the whole groove, put the tang in place, put some more epoxy on the wood, and then clamp it together. And then I am going to be putting epoxy, not just on the tang, but all the way down the whole shaft of the wood. And that meant I needed to mix up a little bit more, because I ended up using a little bit more than I expected. I'd rather it be squeezed out in excess than not having enough. And that means clamps, and a couple clamps. You know, just one or two. You also notice that the second piece on here is larger than the first piece, and that's okay, because we'll trim them up and clean them and make it look a little prettier. You can see how this all clamps together, and that wasn't enough. So we went and got a few more clamps, because all you need is in plus one. You'll also notice on this scrap of wood, I have a bunch of iron stamps on there, and this was a test piece at one point, and I was planning on just planing it off and getting rid of those, but I ended up cutting it right at one of those circles, and you'll see it in the end. It actually ended up being a slight feature into the handle. So after letting it cure overnight, we can take all these pieces off and then start smoothing it down. First thing we need to do is plane it all down smooth, as we had the one side bigger than the other, and that's okay, because the plane makes very quick work of bringing these down into the flush and true. And this allows me to make sure I have the same amount of wood on both sides. And because that little bit of a neck in there, I can actually squeeze it by and work it in. That actually works out really well. I was very pleased with how that goes. On one side, I needed to do a good bit more material. And then, of course, when I realized after I had actually glued these together with opposing grain, so that meant as I was planing one side, I was getting nice clean curls, and the other side, I was actually getting a bit of tear out. So I had to be very careful with that and actually sharpen the plane up a little more. But that's just one of those things you try to watch out for, and if you forget to, then, well, it's a lesson learned. Then we can come in with the spoke shave and start to round these over. And this is where I'm starting to play with what do I want to experience, what do I want to feel, and I actually liked a little bit of a rough grip on there. One thing that I know I like is I like a smooth shaft on there. I actually don't like with the fiber wrap on a lot of the commercial Japanese, and that's one of the things that I really like. And that's one of the things that I really love about the Temple Tools saws, is they have a smooth shaft that just feels good in the hand, and I kind of like that. The only downside is I like them to be a little bit larger, and the Temple Tools saws tend to be a little smaller. In this case, I can make this one significantly larger and then slowly bring it down to a shape I want. So it's a lot of spoke shave, and then come in with the card scraper to remove the facets from the spoke shave and go back and forth until it's about what I want. And then we can cut it off to a length. And I'm cutting it off to a length a little bit longer than what I feel is comfortable. And that is so that I can make it shorter in the future. I can't make it longer, but if I start with it long, I can bring it back down to it. And then, of course, this is wood by Wright, so chamfers. Lots of chamfers. I was originally playing with chamfering the corners on this along the whole shaft, and I felt that I didn't quite like that as much. I liked that smoother feeling. So it's one of these things that you play with it for a little bit and you see if you like it, and then if not, you change it. Also, I need some chamfers right up next to it, and this is a great place to bring the chisel in and be a little bit careful. You want to bang it on the steel, but it's a lot of fun to get those little curls. I was also at a bit of a predicament. Usually I'm going to give a light sanding to the oak so that it absorbs more finish, but I had poplar on the other side, and I don't like sanding that because it makes it a little blotchy, and so I decided to, well, just go ahead and sand it. In this case, I'm just trying to work dust into the pores. I'm smoothing it out a little bit, but not really. The more dust you can work in, the more grain is going to pop out, and for smooth woods like cherry and maple, that means that they are going to be blotchy, which is what you want on oak. You want that to pop out. So this is my last minute thing of, do I want to change anything before we actually play with it? And this is actually to see how this feels. And I decided, because this is a rough saw, it is intended to do quick, heavy work, I wanted to keep it a little bigger. I wanted that grip to be a little bit more beefy.
For the finish on it, of course, it's boiled linseed oil and paste wax. I'm going to put boiled linseed oil on it, let it soak up as much as it wants, let it sit for an hour or so, and then I'm going to come back, wipe off any of the excess, maybe add a little bit more if it needs more, until it's just the way I want it. And then we'll apply some paste wax. I'll let the paste wax sit on there for a few hours and then come back and polish it down and make it nice and clean, and we'll get a handle that is very pleasing to hold. I like being able to feel the wood on it. It's not a film finish on it, and it gives me a nice clean grip, and I really like that. So I know it's not a finish saw, but I played with how close can I get to the edge. It gets fairly decent for a heavy saw like this. I can get very good control with it, but it is intended for big, quick, heavy rips and crosscuts. In this case, it marches through this board beautifully, and not putting much of any weight into this at all and just letting it cut. No, it's not giving me a buttery clean surface, and that's perfectly fine. It's not intended for that. It's intended to cut stock quickly, and it does that, and it's very, very pleasing, and I really enjoyed this. So I'm probably going to be using the Japanese saws I have a good bit more in the future, because I do have a decent little collection of them. So let me know what you want to see. It might pop up from time to time, but between now and then, it makes me happy.
So there you have it. I actually really like this. You can see the cut isn't perfect on it. That's because they're intended to be sharpened. They're intended to be as sharp as the last person who actually did the work. And this one has been sitting for probably around 50 years, so I'm gonna have to touch it up a bit. But it is surprisingly fast, especially with the rip cut on this. It was cutting just as fast as I would expect one of my large resaws to do. So I might be using this more often for the larger cuts that I don't really care about the quality as much, where I just want to march through it. And then I can come in with one of these. And I also made the handle a good bit larger because it is a larger tooth and I want something I can grab. Most of these, I find the handle to be a little smaller than I'd want. This one is closer, whereas this one is a very, very fine, delicate handle. I actually want one that's a bit girthier, and so that's when I play around with this. Again, I said I'm making this as a basic design to learn a little bit more about what I want to do. If you actually go back and look at a lot of the traditional Japanese woodworkers, they don't all make this on the Ryoba. Some of them will actually put a T-handle on, and they were designed so that they could be sold as just the saw plate, and the maker would make whatever handle they wanted, and they came in all sorts of different shapes. So it's one of those things you can kind of play around with and make something that you like. But trying to find the old stock, actual handmade blades are pretty hard. You can still buy high quality handmade blades from a maker in Japan, but they're gonna cost you a lot. And one of the reasons that people get into Japanese saws is they're actually looking for something that's affordable. You can pick one of these up for a price that is surprisingly good for a new saw that'll treat you well. Far cheaper than you can get a Western saw that has been made by someone nice. So you're gonna be spending money for something that was actually made by something nice around the same price point as what you'd be expecting for a Western saw. So $200-300 in some cases. Though every now and then you can find just a plate for around 120, 150. But again, you get what you pay for. So I hope you like this, and I'm looking forward to playing with it in the future. If there's something you'd like to see me do, let me know. I do read through all the comments, and really that helps out the channel, so thank you. But I do want to say thank you to everyone scrolling over here on the side. Those are the patrons on Patreon. And without patrons, this video wouldn't exist. So thank you for that. If you'd like to find out more, links down below. I think that'll do it for now. And until next time, have a wonderful day. You can tell this saw, the one I just made, is significantly older than this one that I commercially purchased. And that's because the teeth on this one are bigger, and it is older, and therefore it's a little longer in the tooth.